You're watching Focus Ontario on Global.
The Ford government's push to insulate Ontario's economy from U.S. tariffs is facing some pointed questions. Is this a plan to meet the moment, or is the government using the moment to give itself new and unprecedented powers? The Ford government's Bill 5 has made it to second reading. The proposed legislation would allow the province to create zones of economic interest, and important projects in those zones would be exempt from some environmental laws. Here's where critics have an issue, though. It is the government that would decide where these zones are through regulation, and Cabinet would pick which projects to prioritize. You and I, the taxpayers, are only going to learn after the bill is passed through regulation. Environmental and Indigenous groups have been raising issues with this plan, but so have civil liberties groups. We spoke to the Canadian Civil Liberties Association about their concern.
So our concerns are focusing on Schedule 9 of Bill 5, which is the Economic Zones Act. And frankly, we believe that it's a power grab. Because this part of the bill empowers the government to handpick trusted proponents or designated projects that will be exempted from having to comply with provincial and municipal laws within special economic zones. So we're essentially talking about giving a free pass to corporations to circumvent all sorts of important protections.
I mean, the government has been making the argument that we are in the middle of a crisis, that, this entire country and provinces to move forward. We've seen Prime Minister Mark Carney kind of endorse that idea as well of moving with a lot of speed and getting around or getting over those regulatory hurdles. What's so different in how the Prime Minister views this moment in time and how the Ford government views it?
But essentially, what the Ontario government is saying is that there is no time for the rule of law in the democratic process right now. And frankly, we disagree with this. There is certainly economic uncertainty, but not an urgent, acute, and temporary threat that would be akin, for instance, to a pandemic or a war. And it's important to realize that the powers contemplated under this bill are essentially emergency powers. They're allowing the government to circumvent the rule of law and to bypass the legislature. And yes, such powers are sometimes necessary in times of crisis, but they should be the democratic exception, and they should come with checks and balances, all of which are absent from Bill 5.
Should this bill pass into law, it seems like the CCLA might challenge it in court?
Well, right now we're very focused on fighting this bill, and we definitely invite people of Ontario who care about democracy to write to their MPPs to share their concerns and to call out this power grab. But if the bill is adopted, all options will definitely be on the table, and the CCLA will not stop fighting against government overreach.
So the government is bracing for some kind of a legal challenge. Energy Minister Stephen Lecce had a fierce response when he was pushed on the topic this week at Queen's Park.
I support using the special economic zones in areas that are going to help incentivize job creation to the province. And at a time when the president is trying to move jobs away from Canada, I would hope all political parties would stand with us as we try to give a competitive advantage to our business so that we can get on with building in the province. It can take 12 years to open a mine. It can take so long to do basic things.
But it's not just the opposition parties who are talking about the bill. Independent MPP Bobby Ann Brady, a former progressive conservative, is also raising concerns about very specific applications of Bill 5.
Well, I was a staffer for 23 years under the Conservative regime, and now I'm an independent MPP. I come to Queen's Park with the idea that there should be no monopoly on a good idea, but I'm always looking for ways to support anyone who has good ideas in the House. But Bill 5 is not that place for me to start with this PC government, and there's a number of concerns, but a few that are top of mind. The dump exemption, the landfill exemption in Dresden. I've been approached by a group of folks from Dresden who are very, very concerned. Over a year ago, both the Environment Minister and the Premier had said, look, you know what, we'll make sure that there are, proper environmental, fulsome, comprehensive environmental assessments done on that landfill site. And now we see specifically that landfill site mentioned in Bill 5. And the Premier uses the excuse that, perhaps Donald Trump's going to make our garbage trucks come back and we need to expand landfill capacity. If that's the case, then why aren't we looking at all landfill sites? Why are we looking specifically at one? What has changed over the past year when he was in Windsor at a news conference and he said, you know what, if people don't like something, we'll make sure that we work with them to get the right result. What has changed over the past year? I know of one thing that has changed: the owners of the dump.
So when we take a look at the larger Bill 5, there have been a lot of concerns at Queen's Park that perhaps the government is trying to consolidate a lot of power into the hands of cabinet, and taking it away really from the legislature itself.
I would agree with that, and I talk about centralization of power all of the time. I talk about it at every single level of the government, and we see it happening, and I believe that Bill 5 is just another example. You know, they've introduced a number of pieces of legislation where we can see that move towards centralization of power. We see it happening at the municipal level. We see it happening in many of our institutions, you know, that the provincial federal government provide mandates for, and I'm very, very concerned about the centralization of power. We're taking the voice of the taxpayer away when we should be actually strengthening the voice of the taxpayer in our democracy.
If the government is trying to move at the speed of light here, wouldn't it be burdensome to every time have to go to the legislature to say we need to create this economic zone for this particular project in this area? I mean, how defined can they really get? Don't they need the power first and then the definition later?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think you can expedite processes that, you know, we can still do assessments. You don't abandon the process. You can still do a process, but get rid of some of the red tape associated with the process. Maybe we wouldn't be so concerned if there wasn't the Greenbelt, if there wasn't an abuse of MZOs in this province, if this government had actually, you know, not done some of the things that they have done and built that trust with the Ontario taxpayer, maybe we wouldn't be so concerned about Bill 5. But I think after the Greenbelt, after the abuse of MZOs, Bill 5 is scary to most people in this province.
So needless to say, you're most likely going to vote against this bill.
I will be voting against Bill 5.
Is there anything that the opposition can do to stop this bill? I mean, the government has a majority. They can pass this into law. What happens if you disagree with it, but the government has that majority?
I call on the taxpayer to ensure that they are part of the consultation that is going to transpire very shortly, and all of that information is online, how they can do that, and I think the taxpayer really needs to step up to the plate here and help the opposition at Queen's Park, because we are in a supermajority position. We have seen bills that we have you know, strongly opposed in the past just ran through this House, and I think the taxpayer really needs to be heard on this one.
Bill 5 passed second reading this week and is now headed to the committee stage at Queen's Park.